Welcome to a slightly delayed edition of the PhinManiacs.com podcast. I am your host, Louis Sung, and with me tonight is Chad Ronnebaum and Max Himmelrecht from the Deep End, Miami. Guys, it's nice to have you on with me.
Good. How's it going?
Nice to have you guys. I'm doing good. Just got back from the Jason Taylor Cool Gear for the School Year shopping event at Old Navy. It was great watching the kids having some fun, being able to shop with their favorite players, alumni, and I think we had dancers from every sports team in Miami, right? Actually, so we had the Miami Marlins Energy team,
I saw that with TD.
a couple of Dolphins cheerleaders, and some Heat dancers.
Gotcha.
So, okay, just for curiosity's sake, which of the three would you prefer to be with?
Oh God, that's such a tough question. I've probably got to go with Dolphins cheerleaders. I mean, it's just been so consistent.
Is that even a question? It's Dolphins cheerleaders hand out.
Yeah.
No, I
The
would have
only
thought
question
somebody
is
would have said the
Dolphins
Heat
and
dancers.
The Marlins are. We can ignore that, but the Heat,
Well,
Heat
yeah.
Dolphins. That's the question.
I'm not a big basketball person. I don't follow it that close, so I've never even seen the Heat dancers. I'm sure they're
Gotcha.
good looking and talented, but I've seen the Dolphins cheerleaders many times, so that's fine with me.
All right, so we got a lot of stuff to talk about. Hopefully later on we're gonna have our guest for the show. He's a managing editor for Hogs Haven, which is the SB Nation's Redskins website. His name is Ken Marangolo. I think I said his name right. We're trying to work out getting him on here through the Hangouts. We're gonna have to look into new ways to do this, so maybe we can get some better stuff going on. So in the meantime, what we're going to be talking about is we're gonna do a quick review of what we saw again the Tampa Bay Buccaneers game. We're also going to be talking about the roster, the surprise cuts, surprise signings, that sort of thing. Because really, we've already analyzed the 53 the starters like ad nauseum. Like we've talked about Sue, we've talked about Tannehill. We already know that stuff. So we're mainly going to talk more about the surprises of that stuff. And also we're going to preview the Redskins game since this is when we do our show. We might do a show later on in the week though, so that's a possibility. If we want to go a little more in depth, just specifically about the Redskins, we could do a short show just for the Redskins. But
Yeah, definitely.
so let's start with the Buccaneers game. This is what I like to call the scrubs game. This is the game where nobody really cares. We're moved on. We really don't want to talk about it. And truthfully, it's nothing interesting going on, but it is a good chance to evaluate the last bits of the players who are like on the roster bubble. Like,
Yeah, there's some people. There's some people who care a hell of a lot about that game. It's none of the viewers.
Yeah, we don't. If you're a fan, you really don't care. But if you're someone like us, when I say fan, I say like casual ones. Like you're not really into like you don't really care about analyzing. You just kind of want to watch the game and cheer for them, and that's fine. That's the way you do things. But for us, it's a little more difficult because we have to keep an eye on everything that's going on. We have to make sure that this is going on and this is going on and everything is working the way it should be. So for us, we were watching Will Davis, we were watching Zach Vigil, we were watching Mike Hull, we were watching all these guys go out there and compete for what may very well be their last chance at being a football player, because for some people they may not even get back on the field ever again. So that was essentially their last shot to make a showing. And there were reports that Will Davis was not going to make the roster. In fact, he was getting shopped around to be traded. So, but he made a good showing. He got 2 interceptions, picked off Mike Glennon a couple of times, made sure that Glennon is not like your 4th string quarterback who's only going to be cut as soon as the 4th preseason game is over. And Mike Glennon is their primary backup, and some argue that even now he is still better than Jameis Winston, even though that may not always be the case. He is now. So Davis made some really good plays against a decent quarterback, and you can't like teach ball skills like that. Those are things that you just kind of have, those instincts, and his only issue really is just trying to curb those instincts. Like you have to fight them off. Like when is it a good time to do so, and when is it a good time to stay back and just play clean football? That's really his issue. And tackling is something that everybody needs to work on. That's not exclusive to Davis.
Yeah, Davis. I mean, it was a big game for him because I do think you're right, Liz. I think he was on the roster bubble. Bobby McCain had some good moments in the preseason and training camp, and it was questionable whether they would keep Will Davis. But he has been looking better and better because I know I keep saying this. So you just got to realize he tore his ACL, and it takes time for him to get back to full speed. And I still don't think he's 100%, but physically he's getting closer. It's just been his consistency, and so. I don't know if he'll get there or not. He looked really good in that game, but he'll miss an assignment and he'll leave a guy open, and then he'll get an interception. That's just kind of how he's playing right now. But you can never have enough decent defensive backs, and so I would much rather have Will Davis on the field than R.J. Sanford, which you get 2 injuries to your defensive backs and suddenly you're desperate. So. I'm kind of glad that they did keep him. I'm not 100% sure they aren't still shopping him because Will Davis is a pretty solid guy to just basically be inactive. Because I think in terms of the depth chart, I don't know if he'll even be dressing right now. They have a lot of defensive backs.
He was the 3rd round pick a few years ago. I mean, teams know about him. He was a guy who got scouted, and recently. So you're entirely right that it makes even more sense that he was on the block because there are teams picking 5 spots after Miami who might have been looking at him. And
I'm kind of, it'll be interesting to watch because there's 2 scenarios, and that is if Miami stays healthy. I'm trying to, is it the 4th game? Do you happen to know, Max or Lewis, when the trade deadline is in the NFL?
Yeah, the trade deadline is after week 8 now, I believe.
Week 8. And so if Miami gets close into that week 8 area and they're relatively healthy at corner, they may decide to move Davis still, particularly when Ajayi's ready to come back onto the active roster. Because right now, if they were to activate him, they'd have to let somebody go, and so it'll just depend where everybody's at. But by week 8, it's so hard to keep enough good defensive backs on your team. I guarantee by week 8 there'll be several teams that Will Davis would be starting as their number 3 corner for sure.
And I think looking at that as well. Once the regular season starts and guys get a little bit banged up, it's going to be easier to pick which one of these corners, because I don't think we're going to carry 7 corners into the regular season too far.
No, I don't either. That's why I said somebody's going to have to go somehow.
Right, and I think it's much easier to stash a guy on injured reserve once you get into the season than it is right now. So I think they might take a guy like Bobby McCain or Tony Lippett or even Will Davis. It's really going to come down to special teams and stash him away just for next season. Or if someone makes an offer that they really like, I mean, if Will Davis comes out and does what he did the other night and has, an interception for a couple of weeks and then ends up with a pick or 2 going into the trade deadline and a team is willing to give up a 5th or a 6th, then who knows what Miami does.
I can't imagine that they're just going to remove Will Davis because after the plays he made, the way I look at it is that if you need that depth at cornerback, because just speaking on experience from last year, the Dolphins had secondary issues, and a lot of it was because we just didn't have enough players. Like, never mind the quality of the players, there just weren't enough bodies to throw out there.
Right.
It was turning into a point where, like, we had to call in R.J. Stanford. We had to call him from wherever he was on his couch somewhere and say, "Can you still play football?" And he's like, "Yeah, I can still play football." Okay, come in here because we need a body to throw out there. And we have okay. Let me just cut this off real quick here because we're kind of working on a wonky schedule here because we wound up starting late. So I see that Karen Marangolo, our guest speaker for the night, has just managed to join the chat. So Ken, nice to have you with us.
Hey, appreciate you guys having me. I'm figuring out all this technology. I hate smartphones. I always have. It's great. Don't get me wrong. It's the best, but it's such a disaster and all. It's like it invaded so many aspects of our lives. And like, if you can't figure it out, you're so far behind in life, right?
Yeah. If you have a dumb phone, then you're in a serious amount of trouble. Like, yeah, but you might have good phone calls though.
Especially in this business.
Yeah, my phone has a dumb user.
I don't know what to say to that.
Yeah.
I can't come up with a snappy comeback for that.
What do we got, man? What are we talking about?
Well, right now we were just reviewing the Dolphins game against the Buccaneers, but since you jumped in here, we're gonna go ahead and switch gears here to the Washington Redskins game. There's a lot of stuff going around the Redskins organization, and both the Dolphins and the Redskins have their own issues happening. But it seems to me that recently it's been the Redskins that are front and center with a lot of the drama that's going on in football right now. So. Just give us real quick your perception of what the Redskins are going to be able to do this season, and what are your main concerns for the upcoming season.
I thought you guys would want to talk about Super Bowl 17. I didn't realize you wanted to focus on the present.
we want to talk about Super Bowl 7.
See, there you go. Now you're talking. Yeah, no, we're kind of a dumpster fire these days. It's been that way for quite some time. Actually, since Dan Snyder took over, really, the way that the team has been run and managed has been just a kind of an epic disaster. In the sense that what I've said, and I think what kind of sums up the whole issue is, I think Dan Snyder has successfully created an atmosphere where people come and fail. It's not a place where people have been inspired to give their best. It's not a place where the best people have wanted to come. It's a place where ambition and has come to die. And that's changing. It's an interesting time. Now, Redskins fans, we always say, of course, we're on year one every year of our return to greatness. But if you want to know the excuse this year why we would subscribe to such a thought or philosophy, it's all Scott McLuhan. We call him McLovin, and he's great. He's the most respected, knowledgeable, know-how football guy that we've had, in this organization since those glory days we briefly mentioned a couple minutes ago. He knows how to pick football players. And everyone around him knows that he knows how to pick football players. He's been to places where he's actually picked good football players, as opposed to previous general managers like Vinny Serrato, specifically, who was really only around guys who were good, but it didn't seem to really rub off on him. I think that what McLovin gives us is, this team really does need to start from scratch. And when you start from scratch, it's easy to if you have a first-round pick, which we seldom have, it's easy to pick a blue chipper that everyone kind of thinks is going to be great. And I'm not talking about the RG3s of the world. I'm more talking about the Trent Williamses, the Ryan Kerrigans, guys who everyone kind of looks at coming out of college and says, yeah, this guy's probably going to be able to play at a high level for a long time. It's the other picks, the RG3s and the high cornerbacks and the wide receivers that flame out, where everyone takes the risk on those guys, but we just always seem to lose. So with McLovin, what we're getting is a guy who knows how to pick a team, knows what he wants in a player, knows how those players have to work together, and he knows that he can get 7 or 8 or 9 guys every single year in the draft. We have 8 guys make the team, and a lot of times guys make the team because they were drafted by them. If you draft him, he makes the team, you're a genius. But these guys can play special teams. They might be able to start for us in 3 or 4 years. I hope I've given you just a teeny bit of insight into how terrible and how philosophical and outwardly, we just dissect our brains and souls on a second-by-second basis here in Washington. It could be good this year, guys, and I hope it starts week 1.
So let me just ask you this,
Yep.
because I'm curious, how much of the blame do you put on RG3 for the situation that's going on, or do you think it's more along the lines of Jay Gruden just really not liking this guy? Because just from an outside perspective, not from somebody who spends their every waking moment with the Redskins like I do with the Dolphins, what would you say is the real issue here? Is it RG3 himself, or is it Gruden just being dumb with RG3 and saying, I don't want to play you because I just don't like you?
I think it's fascinating that the national story has had any of that flavor at all. Whether Jake Gruden likes him or not. I mean, that we're talking about like passing notes in class at this point in time. You know, like we're talking about, will you go out with the blame? And I think he shares most of it with Dan Snyder. I think the two of those guys got together. I mean, Jay Gruden wasn't even here when we drafted him, and that's the decision really that hurt us. Of course, I was way against the trade when it happened, but who you get. It's not a good trade to trade up that many draft picks to get a guy. And he was immediately coddled by Dan Snyder. They were immediately, seen out, hanging out. They became boys. He treated Griffin differently. The rest of the guys saw it. It was not. I heard from a player on the team that when they were even looking to hire a new coach, when they were sitting out in the process, Dan Snyder gave Griffin a sheet of paper with, a handful of names on them, essentially making it seem to people who were watching that RG's signing off on who he would or would not. His style of play and the rate at which he had to be able to develop in order to even be successful at all was working against him. So, Gruden he's a different kind of coach for us in that he has worn some of these feelings on his sleeve in press conferences, and certainly there's no how as that all changes, what it means for a guy to come in and get a head coaching job and not be able to win because of players he had no control in picking. And it's not even about whether you like someone or not. Jay Gruden came here to do to run a thing that he was good at doing, and he really wasn't able to do that with RG3. Assets.
Hey Ken, you're kind of breaking up a little. Ken, you're kind of breaking up a little, bro. Can you see if you can go to? Can you see if you can go to a place that's maybe not close too much, or I don't know, man. I'm just trying to see if maybe we can clear this up a little bit.
I got full bars and full Wi-Fi.
Oh, there we go. It sounds a lot better now.
I'll keep this going.
There we go.
He's clear now. He kind of fell off there, but he was clear again now.
Technology. This is Dolphins working the boards tonight, guys.
Hey, we have a question for you, Ken. This is just looking at the upcoming game with the Dolphins. How big of a leash do you think Cousins has? Do you think there's any chance that we will see a situation where RG3 would come in the second half, or anything like that? Or do you think, no matter how the game is going, do you think Cousins is in pretty solid shape to start the whole thing?
I don't think he's looking over his shoulder at all from a Cousins standpoint. To tie a bow on what we were just talking about with regard to Luis. Luis, you there?
Yeah, you kind of faded away again, man.
What?
Like, I don't know where you were before,
Guy,
but you need to go back to
it's
it.
unbelievable. You guys think unbelievable. Unbelievable, guys. I'm gonna go outside, but I don't think that was me. That was Vinny Serrato. Vinny Serrato was doing that one.
It kind of, I gotta stop you, guys, Ken, because it sounds like you were drinking before you came on. So I'm like, okay, I gotta stop him before he makes people start asking questions.
No, it's just fun, man. I have full bars here. No idea how you guys aren't hearing me. I hear you guys perfectly clear.
He's coming through right there.
Maybe just me. Okay, well, Chad, me, I don't hear him that well. But Chad, if you can hear him just fine, then let him go.
No,
I've been
he's
hearing
fading
you
in and
guys
out. Like he'll be talking fine, then he'll cut out again. So I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm not a technology guru, unfortunately.
Well, you know what? We're just gonna go with it
Hey,
because.
I'm willing to give this another shot here. Or
I'm sorry.
are you there? Am I going
Yes.
or no? You guys want to do this, or do you guys want to quit? I'm hearing you. I'm hearing you guys just fine.
And Chad, what do you think? I think we could just keep going. Like, why not?
We can try
Yeah,
one
we
more
can
time.
As long as we
Yeah.
can understand him, it's fine, I guess.
Yeah, let's try it one more time, and if he cuts out again, well, maybe we'll just do the show later in the week or something, just so
Yeah, we'll bring him back.
Because right now it's like you're getting like 3 or 4 words, and then he fades out, and you don't hear him, and so it's like you're only hearing parts of his sentences, so it'll be hard for the listeners to make out what he's saying.
Yeah, if it doesn't work this time, we'll probably do a quick show, like maybe for half an hour, just to talk about the Redskins. All right, so take 3. Go ahead, Ken. Take
Can
3.
you hear me, Lewis?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes. No. So he'll ask if
You
I
guys,
can.
I really don't think it's on my side. If you guys can hear me, I mean, I'm full blown everything, so I don't.
It might be the
understand
data,
if
not the
you can't
bars.
hear me.
Like, are you using Wi-Fi? I think the Hangout app requires like Wi-Fi or data, not necessarily full bars on the phone. Okay. It isn't working. Ken, I'm sorry, man. I hate to do this to you because I know you went out of your way to make it work for us, but I think we're gonna have to let you go because it just isn't working. And we can't really hear what you're saying. I'm not even sure if you're actually talking right now. So, we'll bring you back later in the week. We'll do a quick half-hour show, maybe on Saturday, so that way we can actually discuss this thing going on. But I want to thank you for taking the time out. Maybe we can get this working on Saturday. Maybe you'll be able to get to a computer or something because the phone and the computers don't necessarily mix together. I can't even tell if he's saying anything.
Yeah,
I haven't.
I think the connection might be.
I'll try one more time. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, that's good.
Now you can hear him clear there.
And then he disappears again. Like what?
I think it's his. I mean,
Like, I don't think it's Wi-Fi. We're gonna have to edit all this
Yeah.
out.
It's sometimes the smartphones when you're on a wireless network like that, it just cuts in and out. So we'll just have to try later. It's technology.
Yeah. So this show's gonna, yeah. All right. So we'll have to edit that out. So apologies to those who are listening live. We'll have to get this fixed. So we'll have a fixed edition later going on. So unfortunately, we couldn't get our guest Ken Marangolo. Something was going on with the internet. I don't know if it was on his end or if it was on my end, but we're gonna try and get him on again another time. Maybe we'll do a quick half-hour show on Saturday to preview the Redskins. So we'll get back to what we were doing with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We were discussing the whole idea of Will Davis and the other players that were on the roster bubble. So let me just ask you guys this question real quick because I'm curious. Who is it exact? Who are you watching specifically to make sure who are you curious about whether they were going to show up or not?
You mean in the Tampa game, Lewis?
Yeah,
in the Tampa game.
Definitely Hazel. I have to say, I was watching him close because I thought, God, he looked to me like we have to keep him on the roster. He looks like a very solid receiver in his potential. And so I was watching Hazel real close because I knew it was going to be hard for them to keep 6 wide receivers. And if he was hands down looking better than any other receiver on the field in that group that, of the second and third teams. He clearly is above them. And I was watching A.J. Johnson a little bit because I knew he had to have a good game to make the roster, and unfortunately he got hurt. And then Gillisley I watched pretty close too, and he had his best game in quite a while. It's unfortunate it just wasn't enough with the depth they have to make the team, but those three, and along with Vigil, those have been the players I watched closest just to see how they were performing.
Yeah, I was checking out 2 guys who we actually look for to really play well. I was looking for Walt Aikens and Chris McCain both, because if you put guys like that up against the talent that Tampa Bay was putting out there, I thought it should have been pretty clear that Chris McCain was going to shine. I wanted to see what he was going to do because, I mean, there were rumors earlier in the week that he was on the bubble, which I thought might have been a little bit overblown considering the depth we have at linebacker. He's definitely going to make the team. But I was really, really impressed with Walt Aikens, moderately impressed with Chris McCain. Thought he should have played better given the competition he was playing against, but Walt Aikens played really well. I think he's ready to go for the season, and based on what he's seen so far, it looks like he could hold his own.
Yeah, he had 2 blitzes where you could see his athletic ability, the speed at which he got in there and can be disruptive.
Yep,
so
yeah.
I've been pretty high on Aikens, actually all preseason. I like his ability. He is going to still make mistakes, and so as fans, you just got to understand he's just a little bit more than a rookie because he hasn't had a lot of game time experience, and that takes time for the safeties to understand when they're doing defenses. So much of that defense is in the zones and stuff. You're looking at where those people are lining up with knowing what your assignment is, and so there are going to be times he gets out of position. So I suspect Miami will be a little bit careful with him in some of the obvious passing downs because Walt Aikens doesn't have a whole lot more upside over Michael Thomas in obvious passing downs, but he's clearly a bigger, faster player in run support and as you saw, blitzing. So I still think you'll see some mixed matching until they get more and more comfortable with Aikens in the passing game.
And I was really impressed with how stout he was. I mean, he didn't look like someone who had just been thrown into the job recently. I mean, he looked confident and he looked like he knew what he was doing. And yes, he's going to make mistakes because there are going to be instances where he thinks he knows what he's doing better than he actually is. But I think at the end of the day, we've gotten lucky in a really, really weird sense because this kind of move, Louis Delmas, he's an awesome leadership guy. He's great off field, and he was a good player for us. But you have to look and say it's a little bit of a dead end with him. Like, what are we going to get out of him long term? And we always ask of Kevin Coyle, can we get the young guys some playing time. The guys like Zach Vigil, who isn't going to play over a guy like Kelvin Shepherd, and that's just how Kevin Coyle's system is. That's how it always will be. But now Walt Aikens is going to play. And so now we get to see a young guy and see him develop.
Yeah, he's in there for sure. And I think that's been their plan. It can be frustrating. I don't know if it's Coyle or Philbin more so on who tries to dictate. I assume it's Coyle's is conservative.
I think it's Coyle because you don't see it as much on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But because for me, if Delmas is healthy, he's clearly a better safety at this point.
Oh yeah. There's no question.
Aikens, just because he's got the experience. Not that I think Aikens in 1 to 2 seasons, if he can hang in there, he'll develop into a nice safety. But it's going to take the developmental time. But I hear your frustration on the linebacker side because I know Vigil's a rookie and I know he's going to make some mistakes, but I don't feel like Shepard's giving that much ability over Vigil. Vigil's clearly a faster player than Shepard is, and so me personally, I would rather live with Vigil making a few mistakes during the game and try to have him developed into a solid player by the end of the season than have Shepard in there all season and let him get more exploited.
And I was just thinking about this, back to what you were saying about we don't really know who it is. We have to remember that Philbin went with Tannehill over Matt Moore when Matt Moore was a better player.
Yeah.
Well, he was going to go with Garrard over Tannehill, so...
It looked like it was heading in that direction, but the world may never know. But at that time, Matt Moore was still a better quarterback than Ryan Tannehill in his first year for those first 8 games or 9 games. But looking at the defense, I think there's a fine line to walk between playing too many young guys and then playing enough. I think an injury or two at a position is inevitable. And if you look at our team, the depth isn't veterans. The depth is young players. So we're going to see those young guys rise to the occasion, which is, in my opinion, better because it means they're not worried that they're going to have their job taken, in week 4 or 5. It's, here's our option. We're going to go with you, and then they're going to sink or swim. You look at Koemisi's history, you have to worry that there's going to be a point that he gets injured, at which we might see one of the young linebackers. Even on defensive end, we've got young guys like Terrence Fede, who we're hoping to see him. He'll just get in as a fatigue guy. Like when the other guys get tired, he'll get subbed in. And I think slowly but surely we'll start to see these younger guys because we're one of the younger teams in the league. It's unavoidable. We're going to have these young guys out on the field. Our roster, I forget what the exact statistic is, but we're one of the top 8 or 9 youngest teams in the league. And so on offense, there's already plenty of youth, but I was looking against Tampa on defense for that youth movement to see what was going on the defensive side of the ball.
The youth movement is kind of a moot thing, though, because we all know Kevin Coyle loves to have his veteran players out there, which is kind of, I guess,
it's like the youth movement just marching into a brick wall. Just piling up there. We've got all these young players buried on our roster.
Yeah, I don't, I like to get the young players in there, and it's always best to have a good mix of veterans and young guys learning from them to develop your team. But where and typically I'm defending Coyle and saying, well, I understand you can't just throw a rookie in there because he looked good against second and third teams in the preseason. But there's some players where I look at Kelvin Shepherd and I think he has never been a dominant football player in the NFL. They got him off the free agent scrap heap last year. And I don't dislike the guy, and I think he's an acceptable player to have in their depth for your linebacker. But in no way, shape, or form can you be realistically expecting him to come in there and be a really good inside linebacker. And my thought is if you're accepting the direction of playing players that don't have a lot of upside and they're average at best, that's just your recipe to go 8-8. And so to me, you got to be thinking, what is my team going to look like when we get into November and December and we get into some of these must-win games or we get into playoffs? To me, that's when it starts to pay off to play some of the younger guys, in particular when it's what I would call a lower ceiling veteran. I mean, I know that would probably make them mad to hear that, but that's what I see Kelvin Shepherd as, is a lower ceiling veteran. I just don't see him
I don't think anyone would argue with that. He unfortunately, I don't see with Kelvin Shepherd the high floor, because that's what you get with a lot of these veteran guys. You know the floor, but you also unfortunately know the ceiling. With Kelvin Shepherd, I think we know the ceiling, but I don't know if we know the floor.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, that's an example what you said of Cole Messi. Like, if Cole Messi is healthy, he's a solid, strong side linebacker for sure.
He's a solid player.
Now, I'm not under any delusions that Cole Messi a Pro Bowl player, but like exactly what you said, he can show up and be a solid football player. His his floor, and you're willing to put him in there because he can perform. But I'm not the same.
And Sue helps. As much as Ndamukong Suh is going to help any position, he's going to help the inside linebacker, because the center of that offense is going to be wide open.
Yeah, I agree. I'm just not a big fan. And then I think it's a testament probably to Chris McCain, and his fall was surprising, because going into this offseason, it really looked like Chris McCain was going to be the strong side linebacker.
As Lewis would say on Twitter, we got Legadoo non-aid.
That's not my.
No, that's not mine. You like to mock it.
Right. But I mean, obviously he isn't that. I mean, he obviously wasn't the starter, and it was telling that they've had him in the last few preseason games playing late into those games. And unfortunately, even when they're just trying to use him in obvious passing situations off the DN, you would expect him to just be dominant and disruptive. Could you imagine if you threw Cam Wake in there at the end of those games against their third string tackle? I mean, he would just be destroying the quarterback.
You saw it. The Tampa Bay, for God knows what reason, had Alteron Werner out there. They had Alteron Werner out there on like the third possession of the game. That's their number one corner. That would be like if we decided to put Brent Grimes out there in the second quarter.
Yeah, exactly. But I would have expected Chris McCain to be dominant in those late games, and he really wasn't really much of a factor. He looked like he was just getting absorbed by the offensive tackles he was going up against.
Can we just laugh for a second and think about what it would look like if Ndamukong Suh was out there in the fourth quarter of that final preseason game?
That's what it looks like when he's out there in the first quarter. So,
that's what I'm saying. I mean, how much better could it get?
No, but that's your point's head on, because you're thinking if you're going to be a solid player, you should be dominant late in those preseason games, and that's what you're looking for out of the younger players, or who are showing up. That's like I was making that point with Hazel. Clearly, Hazel was looking like an all-pro out there against.
Yeah, and especially even more so than against Tampa, against Carolina, when they couldn't move the ball at the end of the first half. They come out at the beginning of the second half. Matt Moore has 4 third down completions. He's 4 for 4 on one drive, all of them to Matt Hazel.
Exactly. So, and that doesn't, I'm not come out here and say, oh, Matt Hazel's a stud. He should be like our number one wide receiver. No, it shows you that he belongs in the league. He controls the game when he's going up against lesser players. So you would expect to see that with McCain. And so I think the rumors that McCain was on the bubble may be very true, because if he really isn't capable of playing outside linebacker, he's probably lucky that Deion Jordan got suspended, because he probably wouldn't even be on the team if Jordan had been there, because Jordan would be that guy who's just a situational pass rusher, not McCain. So,
well, I don't think Jordan was pretty good in coverage when he was playing with the team. We were I think
bigger player than Chris McCain.
Yeah, that would have changed. I mean, and it's hard to be much bigger than Chris McCain, because Chris McCain's not a small guy. But, I mean, I think when you look at the way our defense would have changed if Deion Jordan had been in, it would have been an entirely different unit, because you'd have Deion Jordan on the outside. Koamisi would have probably been able to play inside, where I like him better because he's a better coverage guy than he is most other things, even though he's still not great in coverage. And then you would have had Jelani Jenkins outside, and I don't think that's a bad linebacking core. I think that's a pretty good group.
It's not a bad one. I mean, my belief is your inside linebacker needs to be closer to a 4.5, 4.6 speed, and I'm willing to give up 10 to 20 pounds in size to do it, because it completely changes the play calling of another team. Like if you're trying to run the ball around the outside, if you have a inside linebacker that can pursue like that, it stretches the plays further outside. And we had it for years in Zach Thomas. He was so good at stretching plays further on the outside. That makes an enormous difference. And whether it's Shepard or Comisi, Comisi's basically a defensive end that lost some weight, went to outside linebacker, and then got moved to inside linebacker. But he's a 4-7 type guy, and so is Shepard. And,
especially with the lower body injuries he's had.
Yeah, and when we're playing football teams, obviously teams are not going to be trying to smash mouth football us with Sue in the middle because he's just going to be destroying what they're trying to do. And they're not going to be doing a whole bunch of 7-step drops trying to get the ball down the field because we've got weight coming around the outside. They're going to be trying to do 3- and 5-step drops and get that football out.
And unfortunately, one of our biggest weaknesses, especially last year, was crossing patterns. When you look at our defense, in the middle
of the field where that linebacker is, and so that's
especially.
I'm like, put Vigil in there. At least he can. He can run pretty fast and help cover. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But you'll see that happening throughout the season. Teams are going to be really trying to pass the ball against our linebacking core.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and because
we have we're going to try it a little bit differently this time. This time Ken has joined us from his laptop, which hopefully should make things a lot smoother. So testing 1, 2, 3. Ken, can you hear us, and can we hear you?
I can hear you guys. Can you hear me?
Yep. Loud.
Oh my God, you can hear him loud and clear.
We're back.
There you go.
There we go. There.
We don't give up. We're insufferable non-quitters in DC.
Hey, same down here, man. Like I'll fight to the vast majority of this work. I think what it was is that just using the app in itself was terrible because I was telling you this in the DMs. I tried to report live from the draft party and try to talk about how everybody was all excited because we got Devontae Parker and all that stuff. And Chad can attest to this because he was running the show for me while I was there, and him along with our draft guy Jeff Hyde. Like I was trying to talk and he would just hear it. It didn't work out so good. So I think that might have been just in the app at work.
No worries. Well, now I got new technology on the laptop. That works. For what it's worth, Chad does come through the clearest if that helps keep things going at any point.
Chad always comes through loud and clear. That's kind of his way of talking.
Love it.
Even when he's not loud and clear,
that's a lifestyle. That's a lifestyle.
Yeah, Chad's a clean dude. And since he decided to jump in, here's our good friend Matthew Kanata, who's still very much affiliated with the website, even though he's not technically the owner anymore. Matt, nice to you to join us tonight.
How's it going, guys?
We're gonna talk some Redskins with our guest here today. So,
wait, who?
Our guest.
No.
Redskins guest.
Who are we talking about? Washington.
The Redskins. Yes, the Washington Redskins.
No, just Washington.
Now the Washington Redskins.
Washington. All right, go ahead.
Don't argue with the Redskins writer guy.
That's all right. Hey, trust me, it's a hot topic up here too. I understand. That it's an issue, and it will remain an issue for going forward. It's interesting. The BBC sent over an investigative reporter. He literally had just come off like the streets of covering some civil war in Lithuania or some crazy place, and he shows up in D.C. on the night that we played the Cowboys last year on Monday Night Football, and he shut down this restaurant, and it was just him and I had another buddy who I used to run Hawks Haven with join us for part of it, and we talked talked about it at great length for a couple hours. They did a huge thing, obviously on the BBC. They swept the area. But I mean, it's a hot topic.
Yeah.
Okay. Since you brought it up, real quick, just curious, what exactly is your stance on it? Do you technically have a problem with it, or is it just kind of like, I don't know, it just feels like it's not that big a deal? Because for me, you can only take political correctness so far.
Yeah. No. I mean, let's face it. At its core, the issue is. It's the nuclear issue. It's racism. If that's what's at play here, I think when you talk about the issue, there's so much more involved than just being for or against it. I find it preposterous when I hear people say that it's tradition, it's our football team, if they change the name, I'll never root for them again or watch them again. I mean, that's idiotic. If it is what it is, some people, one half says that it's racist and that's what it is, they got to change the name. I think there's a lot of agendas going on here. I think that the Redskins missed a huge opportunity to engage the Native American community meaningfully and materially, which, by the way, is par for the course. The Redskins PR department, they're a huge disaster, and that's part of the reason why all the drama just bleeds out. And that's what people know us for. But they failed in this regard, and instead of engaging a community, and to me the answer is go to the Native American community at some point over the last 30 or 40 years and ask them to respond in one voice, is this an offense? It's certainly not the way it was intended. It's not the way it was created by Native Americans. The team shares its mascot with like just short of 100, I think, sports teams on Native American reservations in this country where their population is predominantly a lot of the Native American, as opposed to obviously being the city or wherever that it's located. And it's a huge issue. If I'm Dan Snyder, maybe I'm talking to them. I'm saying if this is offensive and it has to change, we'll absolutely be part of it. But it's gotten a little bit stupid. Some of the personalities on both sides have dug in heels, and it's a terrible, terrible thing. And so what do I think? I don't think there's any positive outcome going forward unless they change the name. I mean, if that's succumbing or if that's bending, whatever, I just don't see how this thing plays out in any meaningful, positive way where the name stays the same at this point in time. And I think there was an opportunity that was missed where that didn't have to be the case.
Okay, but let me try it this way. I understand what you're saying, and I understand that part of the story, but then I hear reports that there are other Native Americans saying, "What are you talking about? It's no big deal." And then you hear about this people saying that if one person finds it offensive, then everybody needs to find it offensive and it needs to be removed and whatever. And then there's like, well, what would you call it? And it's tradition. And there's like 8 different arguments regarding the name of the Redskins. And I don't
Just
know. Just apparently there's more. Oh, great! So
got it. No. I'm glad you're up. We have a count.
I mean, going forward, I think it's. I mean, I'm not a Redskins expert by any means, but I think that when you look at it, I don't think the name's going to get changed with Dan Snyder as the owner. I mean, he just seems completely unwilling to do anything about it. I mean, if the team changes hands in the future, I think it might become one of those issues that becomes more clear cut down the road. I mean, there are social issues that we stand now, and we say 50 years ago, how ridiculous was this? The team name could be one of those things in 40, 50 years. But for right now, I think it seems like a no conflict. I mean, Dan Snyder, he said, I forget what he said, they will never change the team name, and he said, ESPN, you could print that in all caps or something like that.
Yeah,
I think it was a few years ago.
Yeah, I mean, which is a disaster of a stance to have publicly on a topic that is completely inherently racial. Just foolish when you're a billionaire to even be involved in that. But Lewis, I think what you're asking me is where do I stand on one of those 8 spots, or roughly with regard to that?
What I'm basically asking is, is it? I don't want to make it sound terrible, but I'm trying to word it in a way.
Yeah.
Is it really as big a deal as people are making it out to be? Because here's just what
the climate.
Let me just explain. Because let me give a sort of a parody kind of a that thing. If vegetarians come to the stadium and they start rioting over the fact that there are hot dogs being sold at the concession stands, because they find it offensive, are they supposed to stop selling hot dogs? I understand that it's a bigger issue than that, but it's kind of that same situation. It's when do you stop giving in? I understand that the Redskins thing is a problem and that's specific, but at some point you have to wonder, okay, where does it end? Everybody can get offended by everything.
And I think it's also the problem is it's a small demographic. I mean, I think if you look at the minorities, I think they're one of the smaller, one of the smallest groups. And so it's unfortunate because no matter how painful it is or not painful it is for them, it's hard for us to get the opinion because it's not an interaction we have in our daily lives. I mean, I know being from South Florida, as most of us are Dolphins fans are from Florida, the Native American population there is just not that prominent. There are some, but it's just not hugely prominent. And so I think it's if you got more interaction with the group of people, it would be more clear to understand the outcome. And I don't think Dan Snyder has done a good job of engaging that community, like you were saying.
Yeah, no, he hasn't. And this does. If this, I think that if this gets resolved in a way that the team name changes, it won't be because people are afraid that feelings have been trampled on. It will be because money's involved. At some point in time, I think the way that the name will change would change. If the name changes, I think it'll come about because the Redskins will somehow get good, and we'll get there at some point, hopefully. But if they get good and the Redskins become more of a story for what they're doing on the field, it will raise the profile of this name change debate similarly. And at some point in time, the owners who are loving watching Dan Snyder twist in the wind, and those owners exist because he makes a lot more enemies than friends. They're watching him twist in the wind right now, and they love it. At some point in time, they'll just be over it, and they don't want to deal with the major corporations that the NFL does business with that begin to feel uncomfortable about the situation. And that's the sad reality, is it's going to be because of money, not because of anything about people.
I think it's unfortunate a lot of NFL teams, especially just speaking on Dan Snyder, get locked up in this cycle because you end up with an owner, and the owner's the only one who can't get fired. I mean, I know a lot of Dolphins fans had some pretty strong feelings about Stephen Ross early, but I mean, I think we can all agree that he's gotten with the program in recent years. And the one problem that Dan Snyder has that Stephen Ross doesn't is spending, because Dan Snyder doesn't, and that's not what Dan Snyder's MO is. But yeah, it's sometimes the problems within the organization, they start at the top, and then when they start that high, it's impossible to do anything about.
If anyone should change their name because of how terrible they've been for 20 years, it should be the Redskins. I'll change the name. I don't care. Change it. Maybe it'll help us. I don't care what they're called, the team. I just want to see them win.
What if they call them the Washington Daisies?
I'll be the biggest Daisy fan in the world.
That's
that Daisy tattoo right on the small of my back.
Okay.
Bring back the Bullets. Bring them back with a football team.
Yeah, exactly. So we're no strangers to name change.
But then the gun people get offended.
That's right. You're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't.
Yeah, we've got PETA on us for being called the Dolphins. That's why we don't have a live mascot.
Yeah, I mean, and think about how the Dolphins must have felt being associated with you guys' team the last 10 or 15 years. I mean, that couldn't have been good for them.
Ooh.
Come on!
Ooh.
Come on! Hey, we're terrible.
We kind of feel the pain you guys have been going through because, like the Redskins have been the national punchline in the media lately.
That was the Dolphins for a long time.
I don't know. I'm not convinced we're not.
It just keeps coming. Like you just had the blow up with Harbaugh. In the preseason game, arguing with the coaches and RG3, and you start to wonder, like, we don't need any more of this coverage. We don't want any more negative coverage. We need to get back on track. And we really went through it in 2013 when we had Richie Incognito and Jonathan Martin. And it's so hard, and especially when you're covering the team, it's so hard because everybody just wants to talk about what are kind of like the circus aspects, and everybody just stops paying attention to the other 51 players on the team. Everybody's all worried about what the big drama is, and so it's really hard. I feel bad for Jay Gruden because, I mean, can he even go through a press conference right now without having a bunch of RG3 questions?
And I like Jay Gruden when he became the Redskins coach. I mean, I was looking at it and I said, like, hey, like, I can root for a guy like that because I honestly thought he was going to be a really good coach. We don't play him a lot, so it's a guy I can kind of say in the back of my head. And I mean, I thought I was with everyone else when RG3 came out, and I thought that they would do really well together because I thought Gruden was going to be more flexible than he was. But, I mean, that's not I think Ken would definitely have a better insight for us, and that was a question I wanted to ask, if Lewis doesn't mind if I do so, is do you think that RG3's problems would be lessened in a different scheme?
I think RG3's problems would be lessened if it would be lessened if he stopped trying to pretend to be something he's not.
I think that could be the scheme. That could be the scheme. Because I mean, we all
Here's what it is though. Wasn't there, Ken? You can correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't there a story a while ago, a couple of years ago, where RG3 wanted to prove that he could be a pocket passer and he didn't need to run around and gain yards with his feet and all that stuff. He could hang back in there and do the pocket thing and all that stuff. But that's not really what his game is. He was known for being able to run with the football and be the dual threat be the dual threat a lot, not just have the potential to be. He really was. He actually actively went out and just ran the ball a whole bunch of times. That's dangerous, but that's his game. Pocket passing is not. He's not going to be the Peyton Manning that he said at one point he wanted to be. That's just not his game.
Oh, he doesn't have to be though, because he's the best quarterback in the game. He doesn't have to be Peyton Manning.
Okay, well, that's his thing. So I'm asking Ken, it's like, do you think that I think part of it is, a lot of it is Gruden, but some of it also is RG3 trying to prove that he's something he's not.
I don't think that, I mean, ever since they put a football in his hand, they told him to run, and that's the only way he ever played. And he was definitely a he led the league in yards per carry and yards per catch and touchdown to interception ratio in 2012, which is crazy, how we got to hear from there. But Kyle Shanahan's a good offensive coordinator, and he built a system that Alfred Morris and RG3 could run effectively, but you don't survive in the NFL in that scheme at his size. I mean, it's just it's a law of nature. None of the beat reporters in DC and some of the national people who were around our camp in 2012 would have bet on him lasting over 3 years based on the way they were playing. And you want to be a pocket passer because you want to be able to survive in the league long enough to get a second or a third contract and win games and be successful and be a great player. You can't survive being a dual threat, for a 10 or 15-year career. So, it's something brand new to him. And the development, Mike Shanahan said it was going to take 3 years for it to happen, and that was not accounting for missing so much time, with injuries. And so now you're talking about a guy who's physically unable to do some of those things, and you add in all the drama and crap on top of it that went with coming here, and being Black Jesus, and being the savior for a fan base, and having all those expectations and labels put on you, being coddled by the owner, being told you're the best. So it was like the perfectly terrible scenario for him. I don't think he'll be better. Like, I don't think he's going to be a 10-year quarterback going somewhere else, but he can definitely contribute to a team. His skill set allows him to do it. We can't put him on the field. The very first question, I think either Chad or Lewis asked when we were trying it on the phone about his Cousins, how long of a leash does he have? This question leads right into that, because the only way the Redskins can move forward as an organization, they have to see who Cousins is. They need to give him a whole year. They've made this team his, and they can't afford to put Griffin on the field because starting this week, if he gets hurt, if he's injured at any point from now through the end of the season wearing a Redskins jersey, we owe him $16 million. If he doesn't get hurt and we cut him, we owe him $0. I think you'll see him potentially get traded before the trading deadline. I don't think he'll see the field for us at all. I think he'll be the number 3 at best. Only in the most dire, crazy, terrible scenarios for Kirk Cousins is RG3 even potentially a player on our team this season.
So what are your expectations for the Redskins just this upcoming season? Like, do you trust that Kirk Cousins can actually be a good quarterback, or is it kind of like he had one really good game like Matt Flynn and then his true colors arrive?
No, I think you have an exact opposite scenario with Kirk Cousins, and I'll be the optimistic Redskins fan for sure, but a lot of people like Kirk Cousins out of the draft. A lot of teams would have been willing to draft him in the second or third round and potentially have him, be a guy who starts in a year or two, and that's what Shanahan wanted. Shanahan coached him in the Senior Bowl in Mobile, fell in love with him, came back here and told all of us this was the guy he was going to bring in, again, in that second, third round territory and build around, using all the other picks to bring in linemen and linebackers and other guys you need, which didn't happen because Snyder pulled the Griffin trade, and Shanahan was hamstrung. And I think that Cousins came here. He's been developing. I hate using like all the pro football reference and the Football Outsiders and all their made-up statistics, which actually do mean something. But Kirk Cousins definitely was playing better towards the end of his stint last season, except for, there's a big one, throwing the ball to the other team at an alarming rate, which is like unprecedentedly terrible and bad. They had no idea. He was like the public defender, from My Cousin Vinny, when like he goes up there and he starts stuttering, and you're like, what the hell is this? This is not what we talked about. I think he's definitely not that guy. I think he's capable of being a starter on our team or any other team for 5 to 7 years. I think our ceiling is way higher with Cousins. Maybe it doesn't happen for him, but with him as our quarterback, Jay Gruden can run the offense that he knows how to run. Bill Callahan is a very good offensive line coach. You're going to see a Redskins team. We're going to rush the ball. It's going to look like a college game, because I think they're going to run the ball that much and really help Cousins in that regard. And you guys know this guy, Matt Jones. He went to Florida. He's a freaking stud. We got him in the 3rd round. He is a violent runner. I think Morris and him, they're going to run him all day long, and I think that's
Morris
what
too. Morris even further south. Morris was a local guy.
That's right.
In South Florida. Morris from FAU.
That's right. That's our offense. Brandon Scherf, our first round right guard, right tackle, whatever he's going to be. I think he's going to be a right guard. We're going to run the ball, and I think they're going to try to get it done that way, and they're going to try to be a physical team and find out about some guys. And as you guys know, because especially with your time with Parcells, and the way you develop guys is you draft them and you play them, and you don't bring in high-priced free agents at the exact point in which a rookie or a second or third year guy is just about ready to get on the field, and then you pay a free agent to come in, and then he doesn't develop. So that's what you're going to see from the Redskins this year. There's a number of players that no one knows anything about. And McLovin, as we call him, he believes in some of these guys, and he knows what he's talking about, because you look at the kind of team that he built in Seattle. It's pretty impressive, and his influence in San Francisco as well. I mean, there's a certain kind of player that he's bringing in. 8 guys from this draft class made the team, and they're all probably going to contribute on the field. Maybe 1 or 2 practice squad guys at some point, but I think, and then maybe that's also how bad we are, that those guys might contribute meaningfully. But I think that this is going to be a great year to watch guys grow, and Kirk Cousins, this is a find-out year for him. To answer your question, I think he's going to be just fine. 3,000, 3,500 yards. Because he probably will throw it 25, 30 times a game. 25 touchdowns. I don't know. All we're hoping for is the interceptions are low.
Okay. Well, we're gonna transition into the game, since you brought up the what Cousins gonna do and what they're gonna be, the philosophy. But I just wanted to make a note. I think, as far as I know, only me and Max are actually from Florida.
Okay.
Chad is in the middle of Iowa and somewhere, and Matt's in Patriot country.
Oh no.
Bristol.
Well, I actually do have to say I am from Baltimore originally.
What? You don't count either.
But from ages 3 to 18, I grew up a Dolphins fan. My dad was a Baltimore Colts fan.
Okay.
So he's not a Ravens fan. There's not a lot of Ravens love in my house.
Nor should there be.
I'm going to jump in here. You guys mentioned Matt Jones, and that's a name that I've been keeping my eye on. And there's been a lot of talk about him possibly taking over for Alfred Morris as the season goes on, and getting a share of carries in the backfield, and how he's such a violent runner. Some people say that he has poor vision and is going to struggle his rookie year. Others say that he's going to take over for Alfred Morris and be the starter by the middle of the season. So I'm guessing the truth lies somewhere in between. The Dolphins obviously have a great defensive line, probably the best in the NFL, if not top 3. Their linebackers, average, but will be able to roam free with the defensive line blocking up front for them. Do you see the Redskins employing a power running attack against the Dolphins with Morris-Jones combination? Or do you see them leaning more on Kirk Cousins with a short passing game and trying to exploit the secondary, which we all know that Miami is pretty weak in?
So I think I agree with your take on your defense. I love your defense. I drafted them high in 2 fantasy leagues. and have a decent amount of money riding on that defensive line. Just so we're all clear, I also see that. I to the extent that the Redskins employ a power running game, I think that's what they want to do. That's the way Jay Gruden has deployed his troops. That's what we're going to try to do. I think if it becomes a throwing contest with Cousins versus Tannehill, I don't know anyone who's going to necessarily put their chips on Captain Kirk. I love Ryan Tannehill. I don't want to get in that battle. It will be hard to establish running the ball against those guys, but that is what we're trying to be. And I think in week 1, I think that's what we're going to try to do. And maybe we're going to look like idiots for even trying. I mean, we do have Deshaun Jackson, and we do, Pierre Garçon and Jordan Reed, and another Florida guy. And I think that that's what you'd always you want to be able to hit those guys and make plays. But I really do think that we might stubbornly try to pound the ball and early in the season, you're trying to establish an identity. That's the identity we want for ourselves. And if you want to be the best in something, you got to try to beat the best at something. And I think right now you guys are looking pretty darn good. And if we can do anything against you guys, I think that would really bode well for us in the near term and for the rest of the season.
So is Jay Gruden a guy that's going to? You mentioned that the Redskins like to employ that power running game. Is Jay Gruden the kind of guy that's stubborn and is going to keep on trying and trying if he's getting shut down? Because you said you don't want to get into a passing battle, and that's quite understandable. Kirk Cousins, he's had his NFL experience. He's played a few games, but his upside right now is pretty limited, coming into the first game of the season and semi-new system. I know he played in it last year, but still learning the ropes there. And he wasn't a full-time starter, of course. Got all the drama behind the scenes. Is Jay Gruden going to try to keep on running the ball down the Dolphins' throat if it's not working in the first quarter or so? Or is he going to panic and just start passing it all over the place?
Well, I think we have little choice. I mean, I don't think we're going to put him in shotgun and just start letting him throw it constantly. Although I do expect some drives to look like that. I think the game plan is going to be to continue to pound the ball. He's certainly not going to give up after the first quarter. I would be shocked if they really changed their game plan up before half. And part of the reason is exactly what you said. I mean, you got to protect Kirk Cousins, and the best way to protect Kirk Cousins is to put him in situations where he has a higher chance to succeed. And when the other team is expecting him to pass every down, he's not going to be successful at this point in time. Or hopefully he can get there, but you got to run the ball. You got to keep running the ball. And I do think Matt Jones. The perfect recipe for me for a Redskins win, is got to be 175 plus rushing yards. Probably got to have over 200 rushing yards, to win this game. And we all know what that means, and the likelihood of that against those defensive linemen. So I think if we get to 200 plus rushing yards in that game, I think we're talking about a Redskins win. And if we don't get that, the chances for us winning obviously are decreased significantly. Unless you just factor in that unknown thing. And the unknown thing, by the way, as a fan, and you guys have had new players come to town, when we changed quarterbacks 2 weeks ago, it's like we got a new team. And it was really weird. I mean, people love RG3, and obviously it got weird about if you were a Redskins fan or an RG3 fan, what was that all about? But when he became the backup and Kirk Cousins became the quarterback, we all kind of looked at each other and were like, it kind of reset everything to zero. Not that we're going to turn around and book Super Bowl plans, but I think the ceiling for this team is just much higher with Kirk Cousins, and I think there's no real book on him yet. I mean, except that he threw a hell of a lot of interceptions last year. If he does that again, we're screwed. But if he doesn't, we have a chance.
So, what do you think is going to be the outcome of the game? Let's just get it right out there. Who do you think is going to win? What's going to be the score, and what do you expect to see?
All right, so I'm going to go with a home opening win, obviously, guys. I got to do it.
Is that your honest pick or your homer pick? Because we're all homers here.
It's my honest homer pick, guys. It's an honestly homerish pick. But I'm going to say Redskins win 31-28.
Ooh,
yeah, and I'm going to say Matt Jones outrushes Alfred Morris and becomes a real story and a hot fantasy pick early this season as a result.
I think I got to say, looking at the team, if you guys are going to exploit something, I think it's going to end up being, Jamar Taylor and Brent Grimes against Pierre Garçon and Deshaun Jackson, because either Deshaun Jackson is a mismatch for either of those guys. I mean, Brent Grimes is an awesome corner, but he's lost a step as he gets up there in age. And then Jamar Taylor historically has struggled with the guys who can get physical with him downfield and with keeping up with guys long range. I mean, he's good coming up making tackles, but when you look at what they're going to try to do, I think personally, if they're going to have success, I don't think there's any world in which 200 rushing yards happens against this defense. And if there is, I think there's going to be some major soul searching in Miami, especially given the state of the Redskins offensive line currently.
Yeah.
But I think when you look at what they could do, they could go downfield on us. And it's going to be a big day for Rashad Jones. He's going to have to have a big day. And I think that's your guys' best option. And what Alfred Morris is going to have to do, he's going to have to play pass protection.
Yep.
And because, I mean, the offensive line, I don't think there's other than maybe someone who can handle Earl Mitchell. I think everyone almost requires a double team against the offensive line we're going up against. And so someone's going to be running close to free because Sue's going to have two guys, obviously. So Cameron Wake and Vernon are going to have one guy each. And Earl Mitchell. And then looking at it, you've got to say, you guys are going to have to use, I don't know what tight ends you have left. I know you're ravaged by injuries there in the preseason. But it's going to have to be something deep down the field against Jamar Taylor with either Deshaun Jackson or Pierre Garçon.
I hope you're right, man. I would love to see that.
I don't know that it's going to happen. I just think if the win is going to happen, that's what it is. I don't think it is going to happen. But
spoiler alert.
What was that?
Spoiler alert.
Oh yeah, Yeah, right. Exactly. Spoiler alert.
No, I'm saying that you're giving a disclaimer. It's like, I'm not saying it'll happen, but
Right. Exactly. Like I'm saying, if I was a Redskins fan, I'm putting myself in the Redskins fans' shoes and saying, if I was, what would have to happen? But I think my honest prediction for the game is just that the Dolphins, it's not going to be hard to get behind the Redskins defense. I think we're actually going to see Tannehill throw the ball deep. I'm interested to see what Kenny Stills does. I think the linebacking core, I think there are going to be some issues. I think they'll be able to go underneath. I just think the Dolphins' offense is going to have a lot of time of possession. I think they're going to be long drives. I mean, 8-play, 6-minute drives, 7-minute drives, whatever it is, however many plays, longer than that. But I think time of possession is going to kill, and then I think there's just going to be a few turnovers that are forced by the pressure of Sue. Like you were saying, Ken, Kirk Cousins has the problem throwing the picks. And, when that pass rush gets in his face, I don't think that's going to make the problem any better.
If Tom Brady can start to panic when pass rushing comes, I can't imagine that Kirk Cousins is going to do much better.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a home opener, guys. Jay Gruden is not stupid. I don't think he's going to put Kirk Cousins in a position early in that game to fail. And you just got to keep in mind the Redskins. They have some issues with psyche right now. You absolutely don't want to start that game trying to have Kirk Cousins do long drops to try to complete passes on Brent Grimes and Rashad Jones back there with Cameron Wake and Ndamukong Suh rushing him. I would imagine they're going to stay somewhat conservative early in that game, and the better matchup is going to be the other side of the ball, because the Redskins do have some quality defensive linemen, and what the Redskins really would probably position they'd much more like to see is, rather than trying to have Kirk Cousins move the ball down the field, having to throw some high-risk passes, is they're going to try to see if they can get some turnovers with their defense. So I don't expect Jay Gruden to come in and take a lot of high-risk plays early on in that game on offense, because that's just a horrible scenario to put Cousins in, because he's doesn't have a lot of experience. You don't need to start the game with him throwing an interception or two. They're going to much rather, if they have to punt, they're going to punt, and they're going to try to force Ryan Tannehill to go down the field and score on that defense. And being that it's in Washington, it's going to be loud. They have a reasonable chance that there'll be a fumble on Miami's part, or Tannehill will throw an interception or something like that, and that can get Kirk Cousins the ball in Miami territory, and then can get some points on the board, then he can settle down a little bit, and they can go from there. So I'll be really surprised if Washington opens up this game 4 wide, just trying to chuck the ball down the field, because they just that's not the personnel grouping they're going to want to come in and try to use. So that it's going to really, the outcome of this game, in my opinion, is going to be how well Miami's offense matches up with Washington's defense. That's what it's going to be all about.
Yeah, I think it's also going to be interesting to see what type of, home field advantage the Redskins can muster up. I know there's been an attendance issue with that stadium in the last couple of years since after RG3's kind of unfortunate few breaks. And it'll be interesting to see, because what we can say about Joe Philbin's teams is they've been pretty consistent in openers. I mean, we lost, the first one was against the Texans, and then since then it's been pretty good. But on the road, too, it would have to be it would be very surprising to me if Washington was able to generate a substantial home field advantage. I don't know, Ken would know better.
Oh, it's a season opener, though. That's a little bit different.
Okay,
right?
yeah, always fair.
That'll be packed. And I mean, it's not, if it was Philly or New York or to some extent Dallas or Pittsburgh, maybe a different story, but it'll be a decidedly home advantage as far as the people in the stands. That first week or two is definitely not the same as by the time we're 2-11.
Yeah, then obviously people aren't coming to the game the same, but it's the NFL. I feel like on paper the Dolphins are the better team, but in
Sure.
the NFL that's not like that might mean the Dolphins in theory would win 6 out of 10 or 7 out of 10, but that doesn't mean the Redskins are not going to be competitive. I'm not in any other delusions there.
And I think the Redskins formula is actually not bad for playing a team that's better than them on paper, because they have a coach who's committed to running the ball, and they have, a good stable of running backs. I'm trusting you, Ken, on Matt Jones. But if that's what you're going to do, then that's a formula that there are very few teams in the league that can stop. Unfortunately for Washington, the Dolphins are one of those teams that can stop, that can really stonewall a power run attack. I mean, if you play, unfortunately the AFC East has a lot of those teams, but I mean, unless you're playing a group like St. Louis, Seattle, Miami, Buffalo, or New York, you're going to be able to make some noise on the ground like that. I just think, unfortunately, Washington drew a tough card week 1. I think Miami's going to come out with a ton of energy, given how long it's been and how much excitement has been building this offseason. And they're either going to come out and they're going to be nervous and they're going to make some mistakes, some mental errors, or I think they're going to come out and play up to it.
I think for the Redskins, this is actually a good matchup for them to start with, because they've just have had so much. I already feel bad for him during this game, because Kirk Cousins drops back. He throws a bad pass, even if it's not intercepted. What are you going to see happen on the television? They're going to immediately cam in on RG3. And so, they're going to be worried about the drama part of it. And so I'm sure from the Redskins standpoint, they just want to get past this game and get away from all this RG3 junk. And
yeah, they're going to be.
Even if the Redskins win, or if the Redskins lose this game, this is by far not a huge deal. We're an AFC team, so it doesn't even matter that much in the tiebreakers. And I think they would much rather open up against Miami to try to get Kirk Cousins, adjusted in the game. And even if they don't win, what the Redskins really want is for Kirk Cousins to have a decent game. And if he has a decent game and they feel confident with him back there at quarterback, and it kind of gets their team going in that direction, trying to get going, then they can, they're worried about, can we get in and beat the Eagles? Can we beat the Giants and win those games? Because that's what's going to decide their fate on the season. So that to me, that's really what this is about, is the Redskins trying to get their bearings. And it'd be way better to do that against an AFC team versus having to start right off the bat against Dallas or something like that in a critical game.
Miami had a pretty similar situation a couple years ago. I mean, we played against the Buccaneers the Monday night after that whole bullying scandal had come out. And there were mental errors, but it was good to get back out on the field. So I think for Washington, it's just going to be good for them to be able to move past this a little bit. And I have a quick question for Ken. What do you think? I mean, I've got the depth chart in front of me. I see a few familiar names on the defensive line. what do you think is going to be the strength of this team if you had to pick one positional unit?
I mean, it's clearly our defensive line at this point. I mean, Terrence Knighton, Stephen Pay, Ricky Jean-Francois, Jason Hatcher, and Chris Baker. I mean, it's it's a classy group. Having Sue, obviously, it puts you in a different league, but our defensive line is probably, as good as it gets without being, as star-studded as you guys. They're solid. They're thick. They're strong. They're young. They're 26, 26, 28. Hatcher's older, but Hatcher, when playing at a high level, is also a very excellent player, even though he's a former Cowboy, which makes me conflicted. But it's the defensive line, and just to touch real fast on what Chad was saying earlier, and I think also Max or Lewis mentioned it, the psyche of our team. The interesting, I think, part about that for us is I think it's a positive change to go into Cousins, because with Griffin at quarterback, if you think about it, like the psyche and what people were going through, you're counting on an offense that basically hinges on whether a guy can stay healthy, getting pounded. And if you look at the reel of hits Griffin has taken, it's actually pretty insane. And so it was.
We can relate. We can relate. Think about Tannehill the last few years. I mean, we know all about.
But I mean, you're relying on him to throw the ball, and he's a good pass. I mean, I think he's a classy quarterback. I think he's going to be great. I think he's going to have a long career. I mean, Griffin relied on his legs, and we always just knew it was going to happen. It was a matter of when, not if. With Kirk Cousins, we're relying on a different brand of football. Like I think Chad was saying, basically we're relying on a brand of football that has worked for many, many, many teams for many, many, many years, and we actually have the personnel to try it professionally, competently. You can't do that with Griffin at quarterback. It's a completely different game. Your hopes and prayers are relying on completely different things, and you're an underdog, because in the NFL, if you're betting that your guy doesn't get hurt playing that style, you're going to lose, because he's always going to get hurt playing that style. And so I just think we're just better off because we're relying on something that's way more tried and true with people that can competently run it.
Yeah, and just keep in mind too, guys, that I don't think the Redskins are getting Gruden. I don't think is going to put play calls in there that are going to put Kirk Cousins in precarious situations where he's going to have to throw a lot of deep balls or sit in the pocket a real long time. He's going to force the Dolphins to beat his defense first. And with the defensive line, our offense is not going to be all shocking to the Redskins. And honestly, the Dolphins have thrown some teams for a loop, because we'll come out on an offensive series, we'll run 3 or 4 plays with a read option. And a lot of teams are not used to that, but the Redskins are going to be, because the Eagles have been doing it for a couple of years now. And so they've prepped for that type of an offense. And so, again, I think Gruden, his game plan is going to be, I want to see the Dolphins offense, which we have a lot more question marks. We're not even sure who we're going to be starting at offensive tackle right now on the left side. Our guard play has been up and down, and so if you're going to rely on something from the Redskins' point of view, you want to force the Dolphins to try to beat your defense at home on the road in the home opener before you get, because the absolute worst thing the Redskins could do is let Kirk Cousins go out on the first series or two, throw like a pick six. Because then it's so deflating for that team, because then everybody's like, oh, RG3 should be in there, and I don't think Gruden is in under any circumstance. I think he'd be absolutely happy to go 3 and out, but Cousins doesn't do anything bad. Maybe he throws a completion and they don't make it on a 3rd and short run or something. But I think he'll be happy to do that to keep Kirk Cousins' confidence level where he wants it and keep Kirk Cousins moving forward, versus try to come out with this unforeseen passing attack all of a sudden and just trying to attack through the air.
Okay, guys. We gotta start wrapping the show up. We've been going for about an hour and a half, and we got a lot of good stuff in. But before we take off for the night, I want to get everybody's predictions for the game. I'm gonna start with you, Chad. Let me get your score and maybe a quick fact you want to throw out that you think will happen.
Well, I think it's going to be a very difficult mismatch for the Redskins on the line, because Miami's defensive line is superb, and they've just everybody they've played in the preseason, they've just literally tore them apart. It hasn't even been a matchup. And I'm a big Iowa guy, and I know Brandon Sheriff, and that's going to be a really difficult job for him to start the season up against Ndamukong Suh with Cameron Wake right beside him. I mean, making sure you get your responsibilities correct. So I do think Miami's defensive line is going to dominate the offensive line of the Redskins, which wouldn't be surprising. So I don't foresee the Redskins being able to run the football, and I think they're going to be doing a very conservative approach to start the game in the passing attack. So it'll switch over to the other side of the ball, and I tell you right now, you're going to be shocked at how fast Miami is playing. Tannehill is very comfortable in the system, and so I think the Redskins' best hope is for Miami to turn the ball over. And if that doesn't happen, I do think Miami's going to win the game relatively easy if the Redskins are not able to take the ball away from them. So I'm going to predict probably the game will come in around 21-10, 21-14 Miami. That's what I would predict.
Okay, so Ken, you already kind of gave yours, but I'm going to ask again to just recap what it was you were expecting to see as far as a prediction goes.
I predict greatness, obviously, for the Burgundy and Gold. It's a coming out party for these guys. If we're talking about a Redskins victory, all of a sudden, Chad, we're talking about Brandon Scherf miraculously did somehow figure out how to make a play or two against Sue. It'll be because Kirk Cousins protected the ball. It'll be because Matt Jones came out of nowhere and contributed 80 to 100 yards on the ground, and it'll be because our defense does somehow manage to keep Tannehill in check. I had 31-28 Skins because I think we're going to have to score that many points to have a chance to win. And if we're able, like I said before, if we're able to be successful in numerous phases of our game, it's just going to bode really well for us because I think Miami's a great test.
Okay, so how about you, Matt?
So since I'm going to take a different kind of look here. Miami has been the favorites in this game. They started off as a -2 favorite back on April 25th when the spread first came out for the game in a line. And ever since then, back in June, it went into -2.5. Back in August, it went to 3. End of August, -3.5. And then most recently, 3 days ago, September 4th, they're now 4-point favorites against the Redskins. So the Redskins are at home. The odds are stacked against them. The Dolphins are coming in with the best defense, probably top 5 in the NFL right now. Ascending quarterback, new receiver core, great running back. Questions on the offensive line, sure, but everything's going in the Dolphins' favor at this point. I do think the Redskins do put some points on the board. I think they put up 14. I think the Dolphins put up 24 or possibly 27. I'm going to go with 27-14 Miami.
Okay, Max, you're next.
I was going similar. I think there's going to be a lot of pressure, and I don't think Ndamukong Suh and Cameron Wake can record a lot of sacks. I think it's actually going to be Olivier Vernon. When you have Sue and Wake stacked on one side, it's going to flush the quarterback out in that direction. I think Olivier Vernon has 2.5 sacks, and I think that the Redskins total under 120 yards of rushing. I think the game ends in a blowout. I think it's 27 for the Dolphins as well. I think there's going to be a few miscues in the red zone. I think the 3 touchdowns are a given. So I think it's going to be 27 probably to about 10-7 possibly. I just think it's going to be hard for the Redskins to get out of the shadow of their own end zone, to make it down the field to a position where they can make plays because they're not going to have a huge deep threat passing attack.
Okay, well, since I'm the last one here, I'm gonna predict the game winning. I'm gonna predict the Dolphins winning 27-14. We have so many weapons on the defensive line. The Redskins have a quarterback that has question marks attached all over him. Their offensive line apparently is having severe amounts of trouble, and I'm not sure how much of it was just being RG3 being bad, but the Lions, with their depleted defensive line, I know about Haloti Ngata, but he's not Ndamukong Suh. But even with that defensive line, they were able to absolutely clobber RG3, and I can't imagine that with Sue and Wake and Vernon and Mitchell that they're going to be able to hold back that pass rush, and I think that Cousins is going to get sacked a lot unless he gets the ball out like 2 seconds after he snaps it. So I think the Dolphins' offense is built to dink and dunk and way, and something has to give kind of an offense. Like if you don't cover this person, then you're going to wind up letting this person run free, and Tannehill's going to see him. And I think it's going to wind up being something like 27-14. I think that the Redskins will manage to score a couple of points, maybe because the Dolphins made a mistake, but it's not going to be easy for Washington to get past that defensive line, especially after the performance the offensive line put up when there have been lesser opponents going out there. So that's going to be it for this show. We ran into some small technical difficulties with the cell phone app. I despise Google Hangouts phone app. It really doesn't work. I never want to use it again. And I swear I'm going to bring my computer if I ever go to the draft party again, so I can record live, but like from something that's actually going to work. So, Ken, I want to thank you for joining us tonight. We really appreciate you coming, taking some time out of your day to talk with us.
Of course. I appreciate it, guys. Wish you guys the best of luck this weekend and for the rest of the season. And, I got Jarvis Landry and Ryan Tannehill on my Dynasty League team, so I own them for life. I want to see these guys stay healthy.
So do we. We own them for life.
So do we. I got Jarvis Landry and Ryan Tannehill in my in the PhinManiacs league.
I got both of them hanging up in my closet, so I own them for life too.
There you go.
That's okay. With that note, thank you guys for listening. Ken, thank you for joining us, and for myself, Matthew Canada, Chad Ronenbaum, and Max Himmelreich of the Deep End Miami. By the way, you can follow Max at the Deep End Miami on Twitter, and you can follow Ken if you're interested in some Redskins stuff. You can follow him at It's Raining Ken with no apostrophe, so it's ITS Raining Ken.
Yeah.
So look him up on Twitter. So with all that said, thank you guys for joining us. Have a good night and take care.